Hi marketers, welcome to another episode of the Mavericks Show. My name is Chris.
Hi, I'm Wasim.
And today we talk about marketing KPI, key performance indicators, how you can optimize your campaigns through the right tracking methods, the right type of KPI, the right type of metrics. And that's essentially needed in any campaign to really help you figure out, are you winning or are you losing? And where are you winning and where are you losing in which areas? And it's so essential to keep track of progress. And we are big believers in data and analysis and making sure we are on track. And there's certainly a lot to share. So first thing I wanted to start with is, do you think KPI tracking has fundamentally changed over the last 10 years? Or do you think it's still more or less the same? We're still doing it more or less the same way today?
I feel it definitely has changed because there's so many new ways you can, for example, capture data at various data points and also then use that data to measure success. It's like, for example, I don't know, if you want to send a hovercraft to the moon, would it be the same wave now when you send it in 2020, or will it be the same way the way it was sent before? I think there'll be a fundamental shift because of all the data we have.
So you're saying basically just because it's more data, that's the main change you see?
Yeah, I mean, I remember when I was working with Hitachi, there was a bullet train which was being introduced into the UK, and every car of the train had around 200 data points, which was collecting. And I see when I drive my own car, there's so many data points and sensors, and it's collecting all this information all the time. It even helps me reverse the car and park it without me doing anything. So that shows data is so powerful that it can learn and adapt. You couldn't do that 10 years ago.
Well, I would certainly 100% agree that we have so much more data available on all kinds of levels, on all kinds of channels. And as you say, like not just in marketing, but across the board in technology, especially. But the point I would make is that marketing is not shooting a rocket to the moon. You wouldn't need, there's never going to be a need for, as much data as you want. Or so my argument would be that the fundamentals are pretty much the same. You need to get awareness, you need to get leads, you need to get sales. Do you think like that even in marketing you would always look for more data, or would you think like the fundamentals are basically what matters?
I think the fundamental obviously is more of a goal that you want to achieve something. But then if you get more data, it kind of helps you with your marketing campaigns in niching down and fine-tuning your campaign. For example, I wouldn't think Facebook is a social media company. I would think Facebook is a data company, because the more adverts you see on Facebook, the more you realize they know so much more about you than yourself. And that's what marketers tap into, only because there's so many data references and points which we know. For example, when you define an interest or an audience, you can narrow it down and reach out to people who would be interested in your product. Versus if you looked at it in maybe 30, 40 years ago, where you would only have a television, and that television had a very broad audience, and you would just maybe pray that, okay, this should work. So the segmentation and the overall focus has definitely changed.
Okay, yes, that is true. I think maybe people could say that there's marketing has become almost like a data discipline. And I know you have a data science background. It becomes almost like more or less one and the same. That marketing is no longer painting colorful ads and putting them on the bus station in an extreme sense. It's data. It's going deep into something. But then still, I would say that is the data discipline. But then, as a marketing strategist, as someone who is responsible for driving the organization into the right direction for growth, in that sense, the fundamentals are still the same. And I think at some point you have to differentiate between those details, because a marketing manager who is leading an organization cannot go into those details. It's almost impossible because things change so much. I think you need to really differentiate the roles.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. Obviously, the higher you go, you would just only look at high-level KPIs. You would look at, for example, channels which work, they don't work, where you're spending more money, less money, all that main high-level KPIs. You're right. But then for somebody who's like a specialist on, let's say, Google ads or getting your Facebook ads to work, their KPIs would obviously fundamentally be different than somebody who's looking at SEO.
Okay. Yes. So who would you say in a B2B organization should focus on data analysis and KPI?
I think from a marketing perspective, the marketing manager would be looking at maybe a high-level dashboard, and then maybe have calls every week or every month where they have their team responsible for each channel, and then they can measure what has worked over a period of time, and they can understand different trends, and also see where they're spending, because obviously every company has a marketing budget, and it's important to see and track like what channel is actually driving more conversions and what is the cost per lead for that channel, so that you at least have an idea of like what is working and what's not. Because fundamentally what gets like measured gets tracked. So in a sense, like if you don't have any of those KPI or any of those metrics in place, you wouldn't know.
Yeah. Well, I think the quote is if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. Yeah. That's what it's. I don't know who said it, but yeah. So you're saying that like this is the ideal way to do it, but working with so many B2B businesses, what's your impression? How do you think the market is doing it? If you draw like a picture of the landscape, are companies on that level, or do you think there's a lot of help needed, a lot of assistance needed?
I think there's a lot of help needed, because right now I see a trend where, although let's say companies are running Google ads, LinkedIn ads, Facebook ads, they don't necessarily know how many leads they get every month for each of these channels, especially then when you compare it with your organic stuff. So is your SEO performing enough? Are these social networks performing for you? Having that overview of all these channels in one dashboard, I don't think many people, I've never seen that, to be honest, with many companies.
And the very interesting thing is, it's not really big science here. Like, as you say, people sometimes don't have a dashboard for leads. They don't have a dashboard for channels. And I find that really interesting if you think about it. I think there's a gap in the market where a lot of people need this education, and then it probably has to do with company size. Yeah. But still, there probably is not a rule that if you're the bigger you are as a company, the more advanced you are in tracking. Sometimes even those companies are not having it set up in a great way, or it's getting too complex. What you see is with like huge corporates is often that they have all the technology, but then they have these huge machineries, these huge systems, like SAP, Oracle, all these big names, right? And then or like Marketo, it becomes hard to change their own systems. The website is if you compare it, is always like 3-4 years behind the latest design trends. Yeah. And the same way I would assume is the same with the tracking. But still, on the other hand, you have smaller companies that are probably not even knowing these opportunities exist with tracking. And I wanted to share this with you. I had a call this week with someone working with politics in the UK. So they're like an organization that works on behalf of startups to bring, let's say, our thoughts into the political landscape. And they're working on some sort of idea of helping productivity tools like we are have a better incentive, or like that the market has a higher incentive to get productivity tools implemented. And I shared, or like we both, the person I was speaking with, we both agreed the fact that there's a big gap in the market. Like the smaller the business in a way, the less educated they are, that those tools exist. Like we are, in a way, we're not a tracking tool, but we are a productivity tool. And the technology adoption there's really a big gap in terms of different companies.
Yeah, I agree. I think when I speak to a lot of companies, it's not that they don't have the brains to do it. It's just that they are unaware that there are tools which exist, and especially the timing, the focus, because we've been in this world, and we follow lots of, let's say, websites out there like Product Hunt, and I know for sure that Whenever there's a new tool which comes out, I keep an eye on it, and maybe like I'm like this super early adopter.
Exactly.
And I play with it very early than other people. But yeah, I can appreciate like other companies wouldn't do that. They wouldn't have the time. They're so busy doing their own stuff. Keeping on top of this is impossible.
And not everyone has to be an early adopter. It's just important that you get. It's not even the advanced things. Just get a dashboard built with acquisition channels, leads, sales, financial metrics, probably also, obviously, and that's the most important thing.
Yeah, but it's the same challenge with even a small, maybe like in business or a SaaS. So, for example, with LeadGen, you are currently tracking all these numbers. But what would you say, for example, what basic numbers or KPIs you would recommend tracking to any SaaS, even if they're like, let's say at a very beginner stage, or at least have got some traction?
Okay, yeah. So for a SaaS business, my philosophy would be to, what I said earlier, not to overcomplicate it on the strategy level, which means you identify certain key metrics that you work with 80 to 90% of the time. And only when you see changes within those or things worth your attention, then you go deeper. That's the way I would approach it. And those key metrics in our case are just like basically along the funnel. So you start with the top of the funnel, new user traffic. So not just users on the website, but new users. That's what you can filter in Google Analytics. Then we look at SEO metrics, domain rating. And it's not a metric to check often, but it's still important. Then we look at click-through rate from the home, or like from any page to the register page, because for us as a SaaS business, the key thing to achieve is getting new signups. So that could be either a lead, but mostly it is a sign up to the tool. In our case, a free trial. So that's important, like the click-through rate through the register page, and then from the register page, how many people could convert. So we measure both, because if we only measured the conversions, we would not be able to tell if there's a problem with the register page. It's really important that both are measured. We obviously track the whole number of users gained in the month, a whole number of new paid users, sales as a metric, particularly new sales. So not just like total sales, there's a different metric, but also like just like new sales generated from new signups. It's important. And then MRR, which is monthly recurring revenue. It's kind of the key metric, the key financial metric. These are the most important ones, and we model them, we show them in a dashboard in data box we use. And then we use Google Analytics, Google Search Console, and also we use Google Sheets, which I actually learned from you, that I wanted to, sometimes the easy things work, that what we do is like we do some kind of a test of our funnel. We pick out a certain time period and we say, now we're going to send traffic to the homepage with this homepage variant, and then we're going to track it for, let's say, a month or 2 weeks. So these are the tools and the metrics.
And obviously these are like some of the very core metrics, which you track them both in the B2B side or in an agency side as well as a SaaS side. But what are the metrics which you would say you shouldn't be tracking or you shouldn't focus your attention on?
Okay, what metrics you shouldn't track? There's lots. So that's why I was so keen on pointing out these are, well, how many is it? Like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, maximum 10 of those key metrics we use. I would definitely say there's like a huge amount of metrics that are not important. For example, the whole social media metrics, like likes, followers, followers gained, followers lost. There's even tools for people that are bored, maybe on the phone, who can check who looked at your profile on Instagram, who unfollowed you. That's not worth your attention, not as an individual, not as a business, because if those people are unfollowed you, then what's the point anyway? They're out. There's a huge amount of other people that you could work with. So all kinds of social media metrics to start with. Then what else is it? Wait a second. I had thought about it beforehand also. There's a lot of things on Google Analytics that I don't fully trust. For example, new versus returning traffic. There's this certain metric, and if you see you have high new users, what does it tell you? Okay, you have people coming to the site, but then you have low number of people returning. That's not necessarily good. So my interpretation is you want to have a good number of returning visitors, but overall, I don't work much with this metric because I can't trust it and can't trust that Google is accurate in that sense. Bounce rate, I'm not a big fan of for content and blog pages, just because bounce rate only considers direct page entries where the page is the landing page. So I would look at the exit rate instead. So that's a big difference and looks at a lot more data, the exit rate. There's certainly a lot more, like for example, page views. Instead of page views, I would look at unique page views, because they can often be manipulated. For example, if there's a bot, or if there's someone who's just like looking at a blog post a lot of the time, or if it's your internal team, especially when you're small, you have internal team members, for example, working on a WordPress blog, and then they're always coming back to this page, and it all tracks that. Even if you set up those IP filters, it's not easy to filter out that traffic sometimes. So it's a lot of those detailed things. Yeah, I think these are the main ones. And generally just things that are not related to leads or sales. The more you go away from that, the less relevant they are.
Okay, but how would you then, let's say if you don't look at bounce rate or page views, how do you measure blog success?
Well, I'm looking at bounce rate for pages that are my landing pages. Meaning homepage, some key pages that rank, but I don't look at it much for blog posts or other service pages, because you have another metric which I think is better, which is the exit rate. Right. So that's what I would say. And then what your other point was like,
how do you then measure blog as a what KPIs would you use?
You would look at exit rate. You would look at time spent on page, average, pages per session. Yeah. You would look at qualitative data also, like with tools like Hotjar. I think qualitative data is often more insightful than just numbers.
But you wouldn't put like Hotjar on your blog, would you?
No, I would. Why not?
Really? Have you ever done that?
Yeah. So if you set up Hotjar for the whole website, you should then also look at blog posts.
Oh, are you saying like recordings?
Yes.
Okay, recordings. Not like heat maps and scroll.
Yes.
Okay.
Mainly recordings, yes. Because then you see just how users navigate, and then you might figure out, for example, they scroll through only like the top first paragraphs and then they skip, and then you figure out another post that scroll through to the bottom. So
the only challenge I see with Hotjar is if you do screen recordings, you have to like literally manually watch all these videos and then put some data into a sheet and then drive quantitative results from it. Otherwise, I don't see how you can drive conclusions from watching recordings. So.
Yeah, but then that is true. But then there's often individual observations you can make, which you can straight away implement. Just for example, I mean, obviously you wanna have enough data to make those decisions, but it's insightful still to watch that. And I think the time is well spent. I do think so. And it's always, as I said, it's a combination of both the qualitative and quantitative, and really looking at the right stats. But what is the goal of a blog post? It is ultimately to if you look at the whole chain of events, you start with like, ideally you want to rank the site in Google. So you want to make sure you get more clicks. So you would look at Google Search Console. You start from there. Then you would make sure people spend a lot of time on that page. You would make sure they're not leaving the site. So you have enough internal links, you have enough buttons, lead forms, interactive forms, which then lowers the exit rate that I would look at. And then you would track whoever converts into the lead at the end of the journey. So not just how long they stay, not just if how many don't leave the site completely, then also how many fill in a form, for example.
Okay, but I thought when you would let's say rank a blog, you're ranking the blog for a particular set of users which are looking for an answer to a problem. So for example, if I say, how can I create multi-step forms? And then I type this query in Google, I go to a blog post, read about it, and then obviously Google, if it ranks your blog post, it will rank your website. So your domain authority of the website increases, which effectively means if I then in the future, there's a customer, there's a proper prospect, let's say a hot lead, they type in multi-step form builder, now they will find LeadGen only because the overall domain authority has increased. What my understanding is, the person who types in the problem is not ready to invest into the product. He's looking just for a solution to his problem rather than finding the actual product.
Well, correct. But then there's always an action any user can take. So you have to then look at the keywords you're targeting for that page and where you're ranking. And then even if it's not not an action related keyword like build multi-step forms, you can always offer them something. And then there's no reason why you cannot offer a lead magnet in any blog post. You just have to strategize and you have to think what fits at this stage. And the good practices, we talked about this also a lot, is like looking at your keywords and then looking at what is a keyword where the people are, the users are problem aware, where they're solution aware, where they are product aware.
I think we talked about them as transactional keywords and educational keywords.
Yeah, so there's different ways to describe that.
But for a blog to be successful, you're not looking at transactional stuff. You're looking at, for example, whether your blog is hitting the right keywords and people are spending time on those blog posts.
Yeah.
And your blog posts actually rank for those keywords.
Yeah, but it doesn't matter whether it's transactional or not, because for any keyword you can find the next action. So that's my point. You just have to filter out what that action is. And I don't think there's any reason why you cannot give them the next step. Maybe the next step might be a click through to the next related post. If nothing works, if there's not a good offer you can place. But this is literally like the biggest area where we also give some ideas to our LeadGen users, which is so many people waste the opportunity of the blog by not having offers in there. Right. And then what's the point? You want to give them as much value as possible, answer the question of what they're searching for on Google, but that is not like the end. If, for example, someone types in what are the easiest ways to build an online form, then ideally I'll give them the answer on the blog post, but it gives me, in that sense, it gives me some idea they want to build an online form. So then maybe I'll give them another resource, or I'll give them a case study on best performing online forms in 2020, because I cannot put it down to one industry, but I can always give them something relevant to that keyword or those keywords that they type in.
Correct.
Okay. Good. So what would you say, now we covered the whole SaaS side, what would you say about the web agency side? You're running a web agency for B2B companies. What KPI do you look at for your business?
For my business particularly, obviously I have a dashboard which looks at the sales side as well as the marketing side. So from a sales perspective, we have obviously basic things like revenue, number of leads, number of new customers, we have profit margin, and I have also like a breakdown of expenses. It's not like I didn't really go in detail, it's just literally a very high chart which shows us like if you're spending more than the revenue or whatever. But that dashboard is something which is really helpful because it also shows whether we are hitting our goals. And that's something we talked about, that you got to have some kind of trend, either whether it's your goal, it's like your comparison between your current year versus previous year. You have to have some kind of benchmark where you see where you're going, not just have everything measured without like a goal or some kind of comparison chart. So from a marketing perspective, we have a dashboard where we look at traffic sources, like traffic where we get traffic which we get from different sources, like either organically or using different social media stuff. And I think the important thing which we did, which we also recommend to everyone, is to use UTM tracking properly. So once you establish your UTM links, just use them consistently so that you can drive all your results in one dashboard. Otherwise, Google adds its own random stuff, and you really don't know whether that's ideal.
Yes. And how often do you look at those numbers?
I have a meeting every 2 weeks with our marketing manager, and she basically opens it up and we look it together, and we can highlight certain areas where if things are working, then we can obviously push it more. If things are not working in certain channels, we kind of try to change something or think of another angle. We also, we do a bit of Facebook ads and Google ads for retargeting. So everything is in one dashboard where we can see the return of not proper investment, but at least like how many leads did we get. I'm not so focused myself in terms of looking at conversion rates on from retargeting ads. It's more of a brand awareness thing. But for our customers, for our B2B clients, where they're running, let's say, LinkedIn and Facebook ads, it's very critical to look at how these ads are performing. So we would have, let's say, a breakdown of the ad per campaign. We would have a breakdown of the cost or the spend, the ad spend on these different campaigns, and then the return of like that cost. So for example, let's say a company spent $500 for a particular campaign, and then $600 on a different campaign, and for the 500 one they got 3 leads, and for the $600 they got 1 lead. So you can then see what's happening with the $600 campaign, Okay. And most of the times we first look at click-through rates. So the first thing which drives this traffic, if the click-through rate is less than 10%, that tells us maybe there's something wrong with the ad itself, which we need to optimize, which then takes us back to page score. In Google Ads, we look at quality score, and we see whether the keyword is relevant to the landing page. Because if it's not, then your click-through rate is low, your cost per click is high, and overall you're blowing up your budget. Because Google is kind of randomly showing your ad to either on different spots, and your rank is low within the SERP, not the SERP, the ads SERP. Okay. So it's more of like when you get into your car, you open up your car and you start your engine and you see all these lights on your dashboard. It's only when it's red you really want to understand why it's red. Most of the times, if it's not red, you wouldn't care. So from a very high level, you would be looking at all these red lights. But if you are the engineer, you would look at all the orange lights as well, because you're worried about every little detail. But if you are maybe, I don't know, somebody who's obsessed with all the lights, you will look at all the things, whether they're working and whether not. So it goes back to your order of kind of responsibility.
Okay. Where would you see those lights? In your dashboard mainly?
We get alerts, basically. A dashboard, of course, will show you trends, and it will be over a period of time. But if there's something fundamentally wrong, for example, an ad which is driving 100% bounce rate or more than 90% bounce rate, so that tells us something's wrong with the landing page, or something had changed. Maybe the page was offline. I don't know, something which shouldn't happen. So in those cases, it would send out an alert. And if, let's say, the lead overall conversion rate has dropped by 1% or whatever those key areas are, which tells you there's a point of failure at some point, you define alerts.
Okay. Have you set up those alerts only for your agency or also for your client campaign?
For our client campaigns as well. We do that. Just because
I'm just thinking about, isn't it becoming then very complex that you have like lots of these campaigns, lots of dashboards, and then lots of emails coming through those notifications?
The emails should only come when there's a failure. It's almost like very rare we get these emails. And we have defined them only to ensure that we capture these failures. Otherwise, what else could happen? You could run an ad for days, and you would then maybe after a week realize, oh my God, we're sending this to a page which doesn't even exist. So it's to capture those kinds of errors. But in other cases, yeah, we have a dashboard where we look at it every week. But if you take that out, let's say you don't have a dashboard, what is the other alternative? You will have to then go through the client and give them like reports from each of these, let's say, ad campaigns. That's the problem I see. There's so many systems and they're so disjoint. Even if you have a CRM, I don't think there's any kind of, I haven't, personally, I don't personally know of a tool which gives you all these reports from one source. You have to define them yourself.
Okay, what's your take on reporting to clients? A lot of clients, I think, expect that, and the expectations vary quite a bit. Some might expect it monthly, some might expect it a lot more. So, do you have a standard philosophy on how to report to clients?
To be honest, because we don't do a lot of PPC stuff, we do a lot of CRO landing page stuff. In those cases, we have usually like a bi-monthly report, and it's more of we look at reports ourselves to ensure we're hitting targets and our landing pages are converting. I don't think clients worry too much about the details of how we manage A/B testing and stuff. They want results at the end of the day.
Okay, of course. So another topic I'm curious about to also go into more with LeadGen and with what we do is tracking internal website behavior. So obviously it's relatively easy to measure where you get your traffic from, what's happening on your website, but what's really, I think, a valuable metric is what happens within your content. From what page does your registration page receive visitors? So there are certain things within Google Analytics, but I think it's not the greatest way of measuring it. So how would you measure internal clicks?
Okay, yeah, that's actually a very good point. There's two examples which come to my mind. One is obviously I had this question for our own company website because we have so many different service pages, like for example webinar landing pages or legal landing pages or accounting landing pages. So if somebody goes to the contact us page, they do obviously tell us that what industry they are from, and they tell us what type of landing page they need. But sometimes they can come from a generic landing page, like a lead generation landing page or B2B landing pages, because we have quite a few of these generic child pages. In order to understand where they came from, we basically have a parameter called source. So when somebody clicks the button on that main page, we have a source parameter in the URL which gets appended to the contact us page. So you will have, for example, apexture.com/contact us, and then there'll be like a parameter ? source equals legal. So that then is captured within LeadGen form, and we know they came from the legal page.
So is this UTM parameters?
No. These are custom parameters which we only define to understand the referral page.
Okay, but then in which tool would you be able to visualize that data?
So yes, that's a good question. In Google Analytics, you can define your own events. So we have defined our own dimensions using Google Tag Manager, and then within Google Tag Manager, then it passes that information into Google Analytics, and within Google Analytics, it becomes like a dimension which you can then slice and dice data. This was a requirement of one of our clients. They call London Relocation, and they wanted to know obviously where the user came from when they filled out the contact us form, and they wanted to see this information in their CRM. So we defined like a custom field in their CRM, and we did exactly the same thing which I just explained, and they get that information in their CRM as well as through Google Analytics. So even before calling the customer, they know where they came from.
Yeah, Yeah, that's really powerful. And those are the things I think that make marketing campaigns successful.
Yeah, and you can take it to the next level. So, for example, now you know out of your 20 different services, you get the maximum leads through one of those landing pages or service landing pages. You can then think of actually creating a landing page and sending PPC traffic to this particular service, because now you know this service is in demand, and let me actually push more money on this.
One interesting thing I just got to my mind is different ways to test different pages, different home pages or landing pages. There's either the way to do an A/B test, or there's also like obviously multivariate testing where you have more pages. But then also I remember you were saying to me, you also often just test one page for a certain time. What's your preferred way? Do you say I have 2 weeks where I just look at one page, or would you do A/B tests?
It depends on the traffic. If you have a landing page with thousands of visitors a month, then yeah, A/B tests make sense. But if you have a website where you get 100 visitors a month, there's no way you should be doing A/B tests. It won't give you the statistical significance where you can understand what has worked. In those cases, I would literally define a landing page and run it for a few months and then switch it off and do the other variation. The only caveat is seasonal change. So for example, let's say you were doing this in winter where the business, let's say, is different for your industry, whether you're in travel industry or some particular type of industry, and then after 3 months business changes, then you are basing your judgment on the landing page that the second one worked, but it wasn't. It was just the seasonality of the business. So I would take that into account as well. But yeah, you should probably know more about the business because of like how it performs in different months.
Okay. Do you have more questions?
I think overall I would say, like, I don't have a question, but it's more of a statement. Like, even if you're not recording anything, just have the basics set up. Like Google Analytics is a very good tool for free. And then there's Google Webmasters, which again is super helpful, especially for SEO, and you don't have to spend a penny on it again. Then there's all sorts of tools where you can build dashboards. You can use Google Data Studio for building a dashboard, especially for the Google world, where you have Google Ads and Google Analytics data, Google Search Console. So you can build a dashboard for free in Google Data Studio. But then we use ActiveCampaign a lot. We use obviously Facebook. We use so many other different channels to then bring all that information in one place. We use Databox, and then the other tools which I've used in the past called OVIOND. I don't even know how to pronounce it. They came up with the most difficult brand name ever, and it's promising, and it's quite like cost effective compared to Databox.
Yeah, well, I think in terms of tools we use in LeadGen, Databox for dashboards, Google Analytics, Google Search Console, as I said, Hotjar for qualitative data, Hotjar polls that actually give us a lot of responses. Even if you have a page with not so much traffic, you can have some sort of polls that pop up at the bottom of your page, ask a very simple question, and that's a sort of other type of data, qualitative data, that I think helps a lot. So then obviously Google Search Console is great for SEO, and then you go into all these details with like tracking tools for SEO, like keyword trackers, and those different tools. But overall, my philosophy, my take on this is pick certain KPIs, let's say 5 to 10 that matter to you, and then this is where you spend your time on. The same logic, like I've heard a big business influencer saying, spend 95% of your attention on revenue than on expenses. The problem is people often do it the other way around, because they have to think they have to take care of their expenses, they have to make sure they keep their business managed. But if you just shift your attention onto the things that actually matter, you can avoid going into those little things, into those vanity metrics that we mentioned. And that is my main tip I think I'd like to share here. And the other thing is, as you say, just get a dashboard, get a system properly built. And I think in a lot of cases, probably people need assistance for that, as you said also. And this is obviously something you help companies with, what is a great place for them to start if they want help with this?
If they obviously want to change their level by just subscribing to Databox, because Databox is such a super friendly dashboard kind of system. You don't have to know SQL syntax or any kind of data language query system or all the complex stuff within data. All you have to do is literally add your connection and then drag and drop the bits which you want to measure. So I would suggest, if you want to take it to the next level, subscribe to Databox.
Well, my point was, or they should message you.
Oh, of course, we are here to help, but it could also mean that they can help themselves first.
Okay, and if they wanted to have someone doing it for you, then the best place is apextra.com.
Yeah, apextra.com /marketing automation, because it all falls.
I had one more thought I wanted to bring in. I think the problem is people are easily influenced by sort of influencers out there, or by sites, by blogs that list certain marketing measurement frameworks or the most important KPIs. So whenever there's a blog post, then people easily think this is now what they have to implement. My advice would be, think about it for yourself. Think about what matters to you, to your business. And there's always some sort of framework. There's always some sort of whatever, even a marketing professor that came up with something that, you know, is believed to be smart, but what matters to you is often different and is sometimes simpler than you think it is. That would be my advice. A simple example is this Net Promoter Score is a way to measure customer success or satisfaction. It certainly is a nice metric, but then what does it tell you? It's just like it's one question. Out of 0 to 10, how likely would someone else be, or how likely would you be to recommend the product to someone else? What does it actually tell you? Think about it this way. What's in it for you that you can improve on? So I would challenge those sort of established frameworks or
yeah, I mean,
metrics.
You're right. It's like, think about it. People, when I see it on Trustpilot, there's like a common trend. People either review when they're very happy or when they're like really annoyed.
Yeah.
You know, that's when they take a decision of reviewing. And it's the same thing with like any kind of NPS score, maybe.
Exactly. And the alternative is, what I would just do is call up one customer and have a chat for 30 minutes or even 10 minutes. I think that's more valuable than 100 NPS responses. That's my experience so far. What got us the most learnings, and that sort of stuff, that qualitative side, don't forget about that. And the other point I wanted to make is, don't forget, or don't be afraid to find your own pace and tracking the metrics that matter to you. Yeah, so I think these are the points we wanted to share. As we said, if you are interested, I mean, we recommended a lot of tools, but you also know we can help you on certain things, Wasim, especially on the tracking side. And in general, just post any questions below. We'll be happy to just answer whatever's on your mind, that you can get started on your tracking journey. So
cool. Thank you.
Then. Thanks, Wasim, and thank you guys. See you next time. Thanks for watching this video. If you've enjoyed the content, there's a lot more coming up, so please subscribe below.